my good. It's working out for my good, my good, my good. I'm in the water, won't drown. I'm in the fire, won't burn. It's for my good, my good, my good.
Yes, this is better.
Oh, it's better. So now these are the basic Git configuration commands, and I believe everybody knows what Git init is. That is initially to initialize a Git repository locally in your project root. This is to initialize your Git repository in your local folder. And then we got git add file name underscore here adds a file to the staging area. And I remember yesterday when we were going through the masterclass, we were being told about git add. You can either use git add file name, which at times becomes a longer process because you have to type in the first letter or the first two letters of the file, press tab for it to automatically appear, and then press enter for you to stage it. But if you just type in the command git space add and then space with the full stop and press enter, it's able to stage your files automatically. So you don't need to like specify which file, it will do it for you automatically. And then we have git status. Git status shows the status of the current repository. It tells you what is inside your local folder. It tells you what is inside your folder. Git commit opens a text editor in the terminal for writing a detailed commit message. Yesterday, when we were doing the exercise, we had Samuel who had volunteered. And if you remember, he wrote something about Manchester, and then he was able to commit. He was able to commit with a commit message. I remember yesterday he wrote something like match day. So he used git commit. This, does anybody know what this, how do you call this? The sign before M.
The hyphen.
Thank you. So it's git space commit space hyphen M. And then we now have this. What do we call this?
Quotes.
Yeah. And then we have now the opening quote and the closing quote. So you have the opening quote with the commit message and the closing quote. So it's git space commit hyphen M space with the opening quote, and that is where now Samuel wrote match day and then closed it up with the closing quote and was able to press enter, and that committed the message for the file that he had added. And if you remember, he had used VS Code. So we also have git log, which gives you essentially just a log, or it's actually a commit history for the current repository. It also tells you what you have committed. Rather, it gives you a hash. It gives you the hash key. The hash key, essentially, if you remember, Samuel was trying to explain to us, it's a time log of when you committed a certain file or made changes to it. So I believe we are going to come to that point where we'll have to learn how to use a hash key to revert a file back to its original state. Those hash keys help you revert your file to an initial state before a commit. So git log is very important. It helps you understand, it helps you identify what changes you made, and it also gives you the log history of the hash files, of the hash codes, telling you the timeline of when you were able to do any edits to any file. Then we have git log -p displays the commit history, including all files and the changes within them. So this gives you a bigger scope of the commits and the history involved and the changes involved. We also have git show commit -id. This displays a specific commit. So I believe this is the part where now you're able to use now the ID essentially, I believe, is the hash keys. The git show commit -id. ID should be replaced by the hash key. So this is to display like a specific commit and what happened. And then we have git log -start. This is to show the statistics of how this file has been merged, pooled, forked. It gives you all that information. And then we have git diff, shows unstaged changes by default. I believe these are things we are going to continue learning. And then we also have git branch branch underscore name creates a new branch but does not switch to it automatically. Git checkout branch underscore name switches to a different branch. And then git space branch lists all the created branches, marking the current branch. We also have git checkout with -b. This is a big command. This is git checkout space -b space branch underscore name creates a new branch and switches it to in a single command. Then we also have git branch space -d branch underscore name deletes a branch after merging it. So we also have git add remote. This is very crucial. This is what we were doing yesterday. We were actually adding the repo. This is adding the remote repo onto your local repository, onto your local folder on your machine. So like yesterday, we were essentially learning about cloning and forking and merging. So you first start with your git bash. I think we are going to do this. We'll have to do this today. We have to do it also physically for everybody to understand. And I know everybody has an opportunity to share their screen and also be involved. So this command is very crucial. It's very essential. Git space add space remote. And then now you're able to copy like if I come here to my GitHub, let me just open my GitHub here. For example, now recipe book. This is a repository in my GitHub account called recipe book. And these are all the files inside. And now you just come here to code HTTPS. So this is what you're essentially going to copy. This URL is what you're going to copy. And when you come into your Git bash, it's always good to do an ls, which is list, tells you what is available. My Git bash is installed in my local disk C here in users stream alive. This is where my Git bash is installed. So whenever I open it, it's always going to open here. But essentially you can open it anywhere. You don't have to necessarily do that, but I was just following what Chucking was instructing us to do. And yesterday Samuel was talking about this branch being written master. Well, I don't know if you can open your Git bash on your devices. What does it say here? Does it say master or main? So
That
Julius, I believe you are able to you did that correction when you are installing your Git, because it has that option to select main as a branch. That's what you did, yes?
yes.
Yeah, many people forget to do that, and that's why it remains on master. And that's why every time they are committing to the remote repository, they always have to include that command of changing the branches to master, from master to main, or on the repository side you change it from main to master, which is confusing. But nowadays it's acceptable, it's globally acceptable that your Git has this main branch identified on it. It's simpler, it helps you instead of always changing it, because when you're committing, when at times it's on master and the repository is on main, it brings a conflict. So next. So I just clicked here additional icons on the desktop so that I can have the Git bash icon on my desktop. This is only what I did here. Let me try, and then next. You can use this Vim text editor, but later on you can come and change it to whatever you want. You can change it, you can install Notepad++, or you can just use Visual Studio Code as your Git's default editor, or you can use Sublime. Some developers like Sublime, some like using Visual Studio Code, some like keeping it simple and using Notepad++. But as we are still newbies, let us just leave it as it is. Use Vim, the ubiquitous text editor, and press next. Now here is the change. Eustace, you are asking, many people left it at let Git decide. That's why it's on master. So untick let Git decide and select override the default branch name for new repositories there, and the default is main. You see, many teams already renamed their default branches. Common choices are main, trunk, and development. Specify the name Git init should use for the initial branch. So this is where you're supposed to tick. So untick let get decide and tick on override the default branch. And this is globally acceptable. Main is now what we use as developers nowadays. Nobody is using master anymore as a branch. That's where you needed to change Eustace, and then you just press next. There's this option. Yeah, this one comes default. Use Git. Okay, this I selected. Use Git from Git bash only. I selected this. Git from the command line and also from third-party software. Use bundled open SSH. You can leave that at that. Use the open SSL library. This you can leave it at that. SSL is essentially just security. This is secure socket layer. So I think they are using Let's Encrypt certificates for server security. So you can just leave it on use the open SSL library. And then check out Windows style, commit Unix style, leave it at that. Use Minty. Yeah. Later on, you can change if you want to use Windows default console window, that is essentially CMD, but use Minty. Minty is much better. It has no issues. And then we have fast forward or merge, leave it at that. Git credential manager next. Enable file system in caching, leave it at that. And this is what I ticked also at the end. I know many people didn't tick this, but this will help you essentially when we are doing Python. It says this allows running native console programs like Node or Python in a Git bash window without using WinPT, but is unfortunately not quite stable yet. But it works. So that's why I chose this, but it's not a must for you to do this. But I believe we are going to be doing Python very, very soon, and Git bash can really help you. with a lot of Python basic commands. And then you just press install and it starts installing. It's as simple as that. Eustace, have you followed through? Are you able to see what changes you can do to help you shift from master to main permanently? So this will really help you in the future. You won't be having conflicts at times unnecessarily. You'll just be able to push your files to your repository with the command git push, as simple as that. Is everything clear, guys? And am I audible? I remember, yesterday when Samuel, our trainer, was telling us we need to think open source, and I was thinking, how are we going to do this? How are we going to communicate as a group? Because our classes are already very interactive, and Samuel said you have to think about open source, and I was like, what open source virtual conferencing tool is available? Unfortunately, a lot you have to pay money for. And I discovered this Jitsi, this jit.si, and I found out that jit.si is actually the architecture that Google Meet uses. So actually Google Meet uses jit.si to build its web conferencing tool. And I was like, wow, we can also use jit.si to build our own web conferencing tool as a project, because their code is open source, their API is open source. All we'll need perhaps is to shift it to our own server. We'll have to get a server, we'll have to procure a server, perhaps maybe from Amazon, or I don't know. We also have these guys, Oracle. We need to find the cheapest, we need to configure a server, we need to move this code there. After reinstalling the Git to change from master to main, will I need to reconfigure the username? No. Use the same username and user email, Lara.